Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR. We got a lot to talk about. We got our Big Ten basketball power rankings we're getting to today. Kit and I are normally pretty even, and we are pretty even on a number of teams today. But if you see below, we are pretty different on a couple of teams. So I have a hard out at 11 o'clock here in about 45 minutes because I got to do a spot on the radio with some people out in Iowa. So without further ado, let's just get right into it, Kent. You and I both have Michigan State number one. I think that seems pretty obvious at this point. I don't think anybody's arguing that. I think you can talk about how really their only tough game was against Illinois in the Big Ten, but when you're undefeated, you're undefeated. There's nothing really you can say there. But then you and I have Purdue and Illinois swapped. I have Illinois number two and Purdue number three. You have Purdue number two and Illinois number three. So I'm gonna let you go on it first. Any comments on Michigan State if you have them, and then why do you have Purdue over Illinois?
My only comment about Michigan State is yesterday I posted that they have the best student section, and Purdue was really upset about that. They got really mad at me. So I guess Purdue has the best student section. Here's what I'll say about Purdue versus Michigan State when it comes to the student sections. I know that's not what we're power ranking, but they definitely have more fans on Twitter ready to defend their student section. That's for sure, for sure. But yeah, Michigan State definitely at one at this point. They have proven it time and time again. And like yesterday was the game we kind of talked about that on Friday was like that'll kind of either shake up the top or give us like a more solidified top of the rankings. And they won the game. Like I know that Illinois is really upset about the officiating. I get it. I get it. You know, when your team loses, that's the first thing that you're going to look at. You're going to look at all the missed calls. So if I'm an Illinois fan, I'd be upset about some of the calls as well. I completely understand, but at the end of the day, in the record books, it goes as a win for Michigan State, and they haven't done anything to lose the top spot for me, so they're going to stay there until further notice.
Yeah, for sure. They're there. And yeah, Philip also getting in on the ref action there. Minnesota and not Minnesota, Michigan State can only be ahead of Illinois if you include the refs for Michigan State. So yeah, not the greatest officiated game, but as we always say, or I always say, I don't blame the refs hardly ever. Very rarely do I blame the refs. And in that situation, I felt like Illinois still had a chance to win the game at the end, and they didn't get it done. So, Michigan State to me is going to get the credit there. So, we got John here. John is saying, "Good morning, gents. Good morning, John. Glad to have you here." All right, let's talk about Purdue and Illinois. I'll give my quick explanation. I've got more than this, but I'll give my quick explanation, and then you can kind of respond to it, Kent. So, as I was going through my power rankings last night, I was like, okay, I'm obviously going to put Purdue over Illinois. Purdue won, what now, seven straight, eight straight, something like that. And Illinois just lost, and they lost to USC here recently, too. So obviously, I'm
Yeah.
going to put Purdue over Illinois. And so when I started looking at, some of the data and, some of the scores and performances and what players played and didn't play, I started thinking to myself, I'm like, I understand that Purdue has won more games. I said, but if we're just going to make this about record, like you and I both have Indiana in the bottom half of the Big Ten power rankings right now. Are people aware that Indiana has the same conference record as Illinois? like,
Right. No, yeah, I get that. Yeah, that
so
makes
like
sense.
record is not always the determining factor. I think it is the trump card with Michigan State because they're undefeated and they just beat Illinois. But as far as I'm concerned, I'm like, okay, I have to look more into the context of these games. And the context is that Purdue, unfortunately for them, has been blown out in big games that they've played this year. Now, credit to them, they've played those big games, but they got blown out by Auburn. They got blown out um, by Texas A&M. Like Illinois has been competitive in all their games. Even that Alabama game, they were competitive in that one, and that one was so early on for them. And then you look at this game against Michigan State, you had KJ only play 9 minutes in the game. Now, like I told Sonny on Locked On Illini last night, like you still got to find a way to not get KJ to foul out. Like you can't just say like, oh, our best player didn't play. Well, it's not because he was injured; it's because he fouled out. So you still have to find a better way to do that. And I get blaming the refs, all that kind of stuff. We just talked about it, but still, he did foul, he did foul the Michigan State player at least two or three times, and so those are at least two or three fouls. The other two, maybe three, were questionable, But the way I look at it is like I need Purdue. Yes, I know not me. Purdue beat Alabama. Purdue also got trounced by Auburn, and Illinois was, a possession away or two from beating Tennessee. So, like, we also can't use Alabama as like the trump card for everything because Oregon beat Alabama, and then Oregon got absolutely trounced by Illinois. So, transitive property is not, it's not
Yeah,
always what we're going to use there. But I will say the other piece of this too, and this is kind of where I go whenever I have a tiebreaker in my mind, which to me, Illinois and Purdue kind of are a tiebreaker. What do all the numbers say, right? And all the numbers say Torvik, Kenpom, Net, all those numbers say Illinois is a better team than Purdue right now. Now, if they played each other, would I pick Illinois to win? I'm not sure. I don't know if I would. But as far as, what they've shown on the court, how they've played so far, I have to give it to Illinois. I don't do it like you. I don't pick like, who do I think would win on a neutral floor. I do it with resume and what have you shown, and typically I will say I
that's too
think this
much
team
work,
will win.
man.
I know, I know. Typically, I will say this team will win, but in this situation, I don't know. It's just so close.
Yeah, I think that it's an interesting. Well, first of all, I've always said this. Like power rankings are so fun because I
Hold on, one
feel
more
like
thing.
it.
Not
Oh, go
me.
ahead.
Again, Illinois destroyed Oregon on their floor too. That was a close game with Purdue. So you want to talk about Oregon and stuff? What was it, 111 to like 77 or something like that?
Yeah.
So, sorry. Go ahead, Ken.
No, that's a good point. Like if you just get like if you want to look at common opponents and see like how they matched up, especially when it's at the same location, like that one was. But I still feel like for Oregon, that was such an off game for them, and Illinois was just like on all cylinders that night. That was the pinnacle of like what we could see from that Illinois team. I wish we could see it all the time, but we don't. They do still have those 3 losses. So to me, like I do try my best to say like who would win on a neutral floor. Now, I will say I'll be on record to say this. I think all things being fair and officiating being perfect, like if God was officiating the game, then I think Illinois would win the game. I think they're a better team. But then I have to look at I do look at other stuff too. I just say, hey man, we got to look at the wins and losses. Like Purdue has 1 like conference loss, and Illinois has 3. So I can't like in good faith just say, all right, well Illinois is I think a better team and they have better players, and if everything was perfect and KJ's not injured and he doesn't foul out and everything goes well, then Illinois is going to win the game. Well, Purdue has done that. Like I look at Purdue every week and they'll probably think I'm a hater. I've already talked about how the Michigan State student section was better, but I every game I go into, I'm like, all right, they're about to lose this one, and then I can knock them down. They haven't done it though. They keep winning, so like I have to give them their flowers, and that's why I left them at number 2. And I had them in front of Illinois last week, and then they won both their games, and Illinois lost one, so it was really easy for me to just keep it there. So
Yeah,
that's
no, I
kind of where
think I
I'm at.
think yeah, I think you make good points, and I think that, Purdue kind of has a little bit of the same issue that Wisconsin had that we talked about last week, right? Like Wisconsin, they went through that 3-game stretch where they lost, to who was it? Marquette? No, they didn't lose to Marquette. Who did they lose to? It was Illinois, Michigan, and who was the other team they lost to? But it was three
Uh,
games in a row.
yeah, it was Marquette,
Was it
Michigan,
Marquette?
Marquette, and then Illinois.
Okay.
Yep.
I thought they beat Marquette. Oh no, they beat Arizona earlier in the year. So they had that 3-game stretch. Well, Purdue also went on that 4-game stretch where they lost to Penn State, which we thought Penn State was better back then, and now I mean, they're still good. Like they're not bad, but they're not performing as well in the Big Ten right now. And then after that, you lose to Texas A&M and you lose to Auburn. I apologize. I said Auburn, Texas A&M blew them out. I'm looking at the scores right now. It was Marquette that blew them out. So Marquette and Alabama just played everybody in the Big Ten this season
Yeah, they
apparently,
really
and
did.
it's
They
it's
have like
hard
a
to.
like we could put them in the power rankings because they have like a similar conference like amount of games as everybody else. It seems like.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. But I think the other thing that's really interesting in this, and this can kind of start our discussion with, with the next few teams, is that like you look at net, and if you want to talk about teams that have played hard games and won their hard games, right now Oregon has played 9 quad 1 games, and they've won 7 of those 9 quad 1 games. Now they did lose a quad 2 game, so that impacts things. But This Oregon team is 7-2 in quad one games. That is the second most. They have as many quad one wins as Purdue has conference wins. Now, obviously, if we're only so far in, that's not a shot at Purdue at all. That's just saying like Purdue's played the most conference games out of anybody, and they have the same number of quad one wins. And so for Oregon, like you and I have them fifth and sixth. They're second in the nation in quad one wins right now. It's
Yeah.
kind of crazy. But that's what Oregon has done because they've lost at home to now Purdue and Illinois, and you can't lose at home.
Yeah, I just started looking at the quad stuff last week. Was like the where I was like, all right, we're starting to get close to March. Like I'm going to start looking at like who's actually winning like tougher games and who's not. And the first thing that jumped out at me, I know we haven't mentioned them yet, but Iowa doesn't have one yet, a quad one win, which is insane to me. Like I can't believe that. But yeah, with Oregon, they're just putting together such a good resume, and like I would love to put them ahead, but I still think that the four teams I have ahead of them, like again, going back to my main point is like on a neutral floor, I think Michigan's still better than them. And Illinois already proved it. They didn't even have to do it on a neutral. They went there and won. Purdue went there and won. And then I don't think Michigan State plays them, do they? Or do they have to play them? I think that game's at Michigan State. But anyways, I think all four of those teams are still better than them, even though they're putting together this amazing resume. But it's only going to benefit them long term when it comes time to make the NCAA bracket. Like they're going to have a really good seed because they played tough schedule and they've won all like you said 7-2 in those quad ones. Like that's huge for them. So I still think that they're a really good team. I really thought they were going to beat Purdue. I actually did. Like this was a big spot for them to like kind of make some noise and assert themselves into the conference. And that's why again I gave Purdue such credit for being in front of Illinois at this point is because of how highly I do think of Oregon, and Purdue was able to go out there and get that win. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
all five, like even I go down like last week we talked about we have like four teams that are really starting to separate themselves. And then like I felt like now I'm at the point where it's at six, and like that's the drop off because we talked about how I actually started my power rankings by putting Wisconsin number 3. And I was like, all right, like they have a good record. They're on this incredible tear right now. They're playing really good basketball, really fun basketball to watch. And I want to push them up, but then I go back and look at those three teams I just talked about, Illinois, Michigan, and Oregon. It's like, I don't think I can do that. So I had to keep them at 6. Basically, my top 6 stayed the same from last week, despite Michigan losing, on the road against Minnesota, which is a terrible loss, and Illinois losing to Michigan State. I still kept it the same. I still think highly of those teams.
Dylan says he could have been on the episode. Got MLK Day off. Sorry, Dylan. We didn't think about you and your job and getting MLK off. So
I love
we should
Dylan,
have.
but he is literally the last person on earth we could have on when we're on a little bit of a time crunch.
That's
The
true.
last person.
That is true. Thanks for being here, Dylan. We appreciate it, man. Yeah, no, Wisconsin's really interesting, right? Because they have gone on this, what is it, 7 game? Yeah, they're on a 7 game win streak like Purdue right now. But I mean, these 7 games have not been the most difficult games in the world. You have Butler, Iowa, at Rutgers, at USC. They've only played 2 on the road. We talked about them last week, how they're a little bit underrated. I did move them up to 5th in my power rankings because I do feel like Wisconsin is kind of on the verge right now of being a contender for the top 4 spots in the Big Ten. But as far as I'm concerned, like I need to see them get a big time win in the Big Ten. They do have some quad one games coming up. They have at UCLA, at Maryland, at Northwestern, but really this team doesn't face a top tier Big Ten team until February 15th when they go
Dude,
at Purdue. And then it's
don't
at
play with me.
Purdue.
I know what you did. I know why you did
What?
that with Wisconsin. Because right now, if you sit up just a little bit, if you just sit up just a little bit, it looks like the graphic on your shirt, it says Ohio State, and then right below that it goes WON. That's why you have Northwestern at 7,
Yeah,
and
that's
Ohio
it.
State's
Yeah.
playing today. You're trying to like tell people Ohio State won today. That's what you're doing. It's sitting right there, dude. You're not fooling anyone right now.
Yeah.
Look
I
at that. That's perfect.
I the Ohio State's playing the national championship today, so I was like, "Well, I'll wear my Ohio State gear today." And I was like, "Well, we'll be on the podcast. I don't typically like to wear gear because then people think like I'm a homer." And I was like, "I, it's okay with basketball. Everybody
You're
knows."
you're such a homer. You put your team at 15, dude. How dare you?
Gosh, I hate my basketball team right now. Okay. Not talk about let's not talk about Ohio State basketball. It's the
Okay.
last thing I want to
Okay.
talk
Sorry.
about.
I just thought it was
You
really
want
funny. Like the graphic was right, like your Ohio State was right next to like Wisconsin, Oregon, Nebraska, or Northwestern. So it says
yeah,
Ohio State won, like right there. It's
yeah.
perfect.
Yeah, that's my prediction for tonight. Ohio State
There you
won.
go.
So
There you go.
there we go. All right. Let's talk a little bit about Northwestern, right? I have
Yeah.
Northwestern up at seventh. I admittedly I am very high on Northwestern after that Michigan game. I think they beat Maryland. That was huge for them. And part of me was also like, I don't do this every single time, but I was like, listen, Maryland's not exactly done anything spectacular this season. They've had some close games when I look at like their resume and stuff. They're 0-4 in quad one games and they're 4-1 in quad two games. So like they've been winning games, but part of me is also like, what have they done to show they deserve to be up there? And then Northwestern beats them. So I'm like, well, Northwestern's been showing that they're a good team by being very close with all of these good, obviously these good teams that they're playing. They beat Illinois earlier this season. They played Michigan close. There was argument that they could have beat Michigan if not for a bogus call on Jalen Leach, which if you want to comment on that, we can get your thoughts there. But overall, like I have Northwestern higher because not just they're winning games or anything like that, but because pretty much every single game other than the Purdue game they were competitive in, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And like it's well known on this show, especially that you're a huge Northwestern supporter. Out of the two of us,
Oh
like you
yeah,
definitely always take their side and you're always like riding Chris Collins. Like we get it, dude. Like you
right,
like Northwestern. We get it. We get it. No,
of course.
my theme for the show today is that from 7 to 16 for me was I had everything done 1 through 6 and then I had 17 and 18 always done. Like it seems like that's the easy part. And then 7 through 16 I was just like I feel like I'm about to post this and anyone could tear apart any part of that part of the ranking. Like it's impossible for me to figure out. So Northwestern at 7, I have them at 14. I don't think either of us are necessarily wrong. I just think that all things considered, I try to look at the wins, I guess, when it comes down to it. And I'm like, well, Northwestern had that Maryland win. Yeah, they did. And like, sure, they could have beat Michigan. They could have easily lost that Maryland game. And then we're talking about a team that's on a 5-game losing streak. Like, they hit a buzzer beater. Like, they could have lost that game very easily. Maryland did some things wrong at the end of that game that they could have went on the road and beat Northwestern. And then we're talking about a team that's really down right now. But they got that win. And then I'm looking for where else have they won this year? It's like the Illinois game, the Maryland game, and then it's like what else has happened for them? So I'm just looking for them to kind of put things together and actually go on a winning streak instead of just a streak of games where it's like, man, that's a really tough Cats team right there. They're really good. They compete with everybody, but they keep losing. I need to see the wins. I need to stack a couple wins together. And I did move them up, by the way. I think I had them at 16 last week or 15. Like, so I gave them a couple points for getting that Maryland win, but just not enough to really get them like up involved in the top half of the conversation for me yet. Like, and I know I was kind of joking. I love Northwestern, so everybody knows that. It's no disrespect to them for me to have them down there. Maybe I'm a little bit harder on them because I like them so much. Maybe that's why.
Well, and like I also so every single week I go through and I chart like what was people's records this week and that kind of stuff, and that does influence me pretty heavily when I try to figure out like how far people should move. The teams I had in front of Northwestern last week, and here are their records. That happened. So Penn State, who this week played, who was that team? Oh, Michigan State. They lost to Michigan State. USC was ahead of them. They beat Iowa and they lost to Wisconsin. Indiana, they lost to Illinois and they beat who did they beat? I don't know. I just had the numbers written down. They beat Ohio State. Ohio State lost both their games. Nebraska lost both their games. UCLA lost to Rutgers and beat who was that? Indiana? No. They beat Iowa, and then Iowa lost both their games. I move them ahead of all those teams because I'm like, look, Northwestern beat Maryland, a team that's ahead of them that lost, and then they played a really close game with Michigan. So it's like, I don't know, like You're
Yeah,
right.
and
This 7 through 14, 7 through 16, it's just random name generator at this point. Just throw the names in and throw it out, and then you can make an
I should
argument
do
for one
that
of these
next
teams.
week. I should do that next week. Like lock in the teams that I'm really confident about and then name generate the rest and just see like what the reactions are on
Yeah,
Twitter. I
you
mean,
should do
that's
that.
basically what I feel like I'm doing sometimes. It's like, who do I really think is better? But I would like going right down the list though. It's like, okay, after Maryland, because we both think pretty highly of Maryland still. And that's kind of the where you have Northwestern in front, but it's like UCLA, USC. I still think both those teams are better than Northwestern. Iowa, didn't Iowa beat them? Like, I'm not sure. Didn't Iowa beat them at the buzzer? Beat Northwestern?
Iowa beat Northwestern at the buzzer. I don't remember if it was
Something
at the
like that.
buzzer, but I know
Anyways,
I'm pretty sure they beat them.
and then Nebraska, maybe I should have put them up at like 11. Maybe I should have Northwestern a little bit higher, like in front of like
Iowa didn't
Indiana
play
and Rutgers.
Northwestern. Iowa beat Nebraska in overtime. That's who they beat.
Okay. There was a couple
Buzzer.
buzzer beaters for Northwestern that like it was close. I can't think of who it was now.
Yeah, the Penn State game was at the buzzer, and that was kind of one of those.
No, it was Iowa. They went to Iowa.
When did they?
That was like in
Oh, it's on the
December, I
next
think.
page. Sorry, it's on the. It was so early. It was on the next.
Yeah,
page.
they lost to them like I think Sanford hit a 3 from like 4 feet at the top of the key, and like
Yeah.
Iowa was down 3 and they won by 1 point. So
yeah, Phillips got us
Yeah.
covered. Phillips our checker. Appreciate it, Philip.
yeah, I remember that. It was a while ago. I'm surprised I remember that, but yeah, so it's tough, man. Like
so long ago, it was on my previous page. I mean, I had to
That's how
literally flip a page. So
that's crazy. That's insane. So yeah, maybe I'm still a little bit too low on Northwestern, but like I said, the theme of today is like 7 through 16 for me is just like it's really difficult. Everybody's beating everybody, and like you kind of got to just say, well, now I'm at the point where who do I think would win the game? So
yeah. Listen, Sonny knows what he's talking about. JR dropping some fireball knowledge this morning.
I'm the one that just said Iowa beat. I just said Iowa beat Northwestern. You said no, and then I was right. What about that, JR?
Like I said, it was on the last page. I don't know what you
want. Okay, whatever.
You want me to look through every single page when you want me to fact?
Sonny hates me.
No. I just look at the one page. I don't know what I'm talking about.
I hate it.
Yeah,
he's just mad Illinois lost yesterday. That's what he's upset about. He's taking it out on me.
I do think we need to have a conversation though about Indiana because I have Indiana 10th. You have Indiana 12th. Right now, Indiana, I believe, is 5th or 6th in Big Ten like standings right now because they don't have a bad record. They have a good record. And meanwhile, their fans are chanting, fire Mike Woodson, which I'm not exactly like against because I think it's good for fans to have expectations. I think that's one of the reasons why. Programs stay relevant and try to make good hires and stuff like that. You could argue Indiana hasn't really been relevant since Tom Crean. I understand that, but they got Archie Miller out of there pretty quick when it wasn't working with him. Anyway, I do think, though, Indiana needs some more credit. They are in that 7 to 14, 7 to 16 range that you and I are talking about, where it's just kind of crapshoot. They're obviously, at least in my mind, not on Oregon's level, but I mean, if Indiana and Oregon played tomorrow, like, I wouldn't say I think Oregon would win, but I wouldn't say it's like a for sure thing where it's like, this is going to happen and there's no other way about it. What do you think?
Like we talked about this on Friday about the effort from the team and like where we're at with Mike Woodson and everything. And we basically, like, at least from my perspective, I was like, we got to be moving on from Mike Woodson soon. That's what I said on Friday. Then he wins of course, like every time I say something like that and I'm very confident about it. Yeah. The middle. Yeah. Of course he was going to win that game. Of course Indiana was going to win that game. There's no doubt in my mind after I went on that rant about how bad they were and like they can't find wins. They go on the road and find a win. For Indiana, I'm terrified to put them anywhere. I had them all the way up at 8 last week for the reasons that you were basically just saying. Like they have a lot of wins. They put together a okay resume, even though like the expectations were way higher. They still have been winning games. And I just got absolutely blitzed in the replies about how I had Indiana too high because I had them at 8. So I'll be honest, like when I'm trying to put together this 7 through 14, like we were talking about, I'm like, I'm putting Indiana lower today. I can't hear it from everybody else about how I have Indiana too high. I can't do
Well,
it.
it's mostly Indiana fans, mostly. Most of the
No, I
Indiana
know.
fans are
Yeah,
the
it
ones that are
is.
like, hey, you have us too high. We suck. I don't know what you're talking
100%. 100%. They'll be like, Indiana fan here, we're way too high. And I'm like, 8, dude, that's not that high. But yeah, they were saying it. But then it's like also everybody that hates Indiana so much, they chime in too. And I was like, I'm putting them lower. I'm putting them lower this week. I don't care what happened. I don't care if they won on the road. They got to drop. They dropped. So they dropped. That's why I have them at
Yeah.
12.
Yeah. Yeah.
Luke
And I
Goody
mean,
is coaching and playing. That's true, man.
he is. He really is. He's the vocal leader on this team right now, on and off the bench.
Yeah.
And Philip's right. I mean, Ohio State was the perfect team for them to play. And I mean, Ohio State, to their credit, I will say, has a lot of injuries right now. Michi Johnson's not playing. Austin Parks isn't playing, so they're playing this like Russian freshman who really has no business being in the game right now. But
That dude's
and then
massive, by the way.
he is massive, but he is so clunky. Just the way he plays. And then Aaron Bradshaw, I don't know what's going on with him. They won't start him. And then Sean Stewart is just a walking foul. I mean, so uh, it was a good situation for Indiana to come back, but also like that's the thing too. It's like this this Ohio State team's not good. You shouldn't be going to overtime with them, and it's the worst home court advantage in all of the Big Ten. I mean, I literally can't think of you know a worse home court advantage than Ohio State. Maybe Oregon because they've lost the past few games at home, but like there is no arena or stadium that is worse in my mind than Ohio State's because the fan support is not there, and then it's just such a big arena you don't actually feel like you're on the road hardly at all. So
I'm
I
trying
don't
to
know,
think of
like
one right now.
you're trying to think of to me
Like
like Penn
like
State
Minnesota
maybe,
when
but
they're not good is like this year's Minnesota. I don't know because that
yeah,
Michigan game they were kind of loud, but Michigan was in town, so I feel like they kind of got some fans there.
yeah.
Like
Minnesota
if Michigan
maybe
comes to Ohio State, they're going to be loud at Ohio State too. I feel like.
if no they won't be loud.
You don't think so? Okay, well
No. They
maybe
are.
maybe you're right. Maybe it is Ohio State.
Ohio State fans do not show up until after football season, and that's only if the basketball team is somewhat relevant. I guarantee after this national championship game tonight, there will be people that look at Ohio State and be like, "Oh yeah, maybe we should go to an Ohio State basketball game." They'll look down and they'll see 10-8, and they'll be like, "Oh yikes, no way, we're not we're not paying $5 to go to Value City Arena to go see the Buckeyes play." Now Ohio State's still projected to be in the NCAA tournament, but that's just how casual most Ohio State fans are about basketball. They just look down and see the record and they're like, "Oh yeah, this team sucks. We're not going to go see
Yeah.
them." But
What they should do is get a guy from the football team after tonight and put him on the basketball team to get some fans in the building. Like
yeah,
who's like a fan favorite on the football team that people would be like, I got to see this guy play basketball too.
put Jeremiah Smith on the basketball team.
Yes.
Let's see what happens.
Yeah, I bet he could ball, dude.
Oh, I bet so.
He's
I
probably
bet so.
super good at that. They could use him actually.
Actually, they have a number of players on the Ohio State football team that were like really, really good basketball players in Ohio and probably would have gone on to like play high D1 basketball, but they
Yeah.
chose football instead. And they're from Ohio. So it's like, yeah, Philip
They
saying
should do
Jack
that. Bring a
Sawyer,
couple of those guys in.
JT
Jackson. Oh my
Tuimoloau was
god,
really
that'd be
good. Like,
hilarious.
could you imagine if they just have their entire defensive line become the starting lineup for
Oh my
the
god,
Ohio
that'd be
State
great.
basketball team?
Be great.
All
They'd have
right.
40 turnovers a game.
Um, YouTube user says Indiana has the worst home court. Actually, the fans rooting for other teams to get Woodson fired. I mean, Indiana still has a really good home court advantage. They're what 11-1 this season at home. So if the fans are invested, but you're right, sometimes they're not invested. They're only
I
not
want to
invested when you're down 30. Just don't get down 30, and your fans will stay invested, right?
Yeah. I want to make one more comment about that because I was talking about Minnesota. I think Minnesota has the biggest swing of like when they're good and when they're bad because like the barn when they're good is like the hardest place to play, I think. Like really difficult and their fans are insane when they're good, but now that they're bad, it's like empty and it's the complete opposite. Like they don't show up. Like I know every fan base is like that, but I think Minnesota has the biggest swing though. Like their top 3 venue, I think when they're really good, and their bottom 3 when like if all things were equal, if all the teams were bad, I think they're bottom 3. Like the
Yeah, I
biggest
can't say
swing.
that. I can't say they're the best if they're good. I still hold Mackey and uh, the Rack and all those other places in really high regard. But I've also not really seen Minnesota basketball be all that good in a number of years. So
I'm gonna send you some videos today.
they were good last year, but they didn't make the tournament. So they weren't good enough. But yeah. So all right, Kent, we got about 9 more minutes left before
Okay.
gotta get out of here. Is there anything else you want to bring up? We hit on Indiana, Nebraska, and Iowa. Iowa fell. Lost 2 games this week. Is there anything else you wanna get to before we get out of here?
I don't know. Do you want to do the Twitter comments of the day? We talked about doing that last week, and then we didn't do it. I got a bunch already, so like I just posted it
Um,
30 minutes ago. You don't want to go through
sure,
those?
sure. Go ahead. Go
All
ahead.
right.
We'll see
This
what
guy's in
people have
here
to
a lot.
work
He
with.
says UCLA on their way back up starts with Wisconsin on Tuesday. Do we think that's going to happen? Like that's a team we didn't discuss at all. Like we were very down bad on them last week. And then what they do? They went and picked up a win this week and then lost one. Did they split this week?
Yeah, they lost
Trying to
to
remember.
Rutgers. Rutgers went to overtime with them, and
That's
that
right.
was also at Rutgers. And then they just completely destroyed, dismantled, and embarrassed Iowa. They pantsed them. So
Oh, did you see my clip I posted about Mick Cronin though? Like when I was talking about how like he'll be the first to admit it, and then in his press conference after they got that win, who was it against Iowa? He was like, "I'm hard on myself. I'll be the first to admit it." I was like, "Yes, thank you for saying that."
good job, Mick. Good job, Mick.
Yeah,
No, I think Mick is learning. And like I said, I think that home game for them to get back. This one against Wisconsin is going to be important too. We'll see. I mean, Wisconsin's playing really good ball right now, but this is the first quad one game Wisconsin has played in a long time, so it's going to be a really interesting game for both teams. Philip is asking for some crap on Willard content.
mm.
I mean, if you want crap on Willard content, just watch a Maryland game at this point. He kind of just crapped on
Mm.
himself. Is
Mm.
is that what you're looking for there, Philip? I mean, at this point, like I don't even know how much I should and shouldn't crap on Willard for because like he he has no bench depth. He has starters that can play, but also Derek Queen at the same time is not. Yeah, John just said it right there. Derek Queen looks awful lately. Like he's not playing nearly as well in Big Ten play, but we kind of saw this coming, right? We saw Derek Queen playing really well out of conference. He gets some more cupcake teams, and then when you get into conference, you start playing better teams. This is what's going to happen because of the physicality and everything that's in the Big Ten. So I don't know if Derek Queen's going to come back next year. I think Kevin Willard needs to hope and pray that he does because I don't know if he's going to have a job. Derek Queen
Yeah,
doesn't come back. I was talking about it last night on the football show, but like Kevin Willard is Billy Napier at Florida in football. Billy Napier only is coming back to coach because he has DJ Lagway, his freshman quarterback. The only reason Kevin Willard would come back to Maryland, if not next year, but the year after that, is if Derek Queen sticks around. And
yeah,
I don't know. Derek Queen is looking like a pretty good NBA draft pick right now. So not because of his skill, not I should say not because of his skill, not because of his play on the court because it hasn't been great lately, but just because of the intangibles and everything else.
yeah. I don't have anything to crap on Willard about. That game yesterday was, I think, the first game in the Big Ten that I have missed. I didn't watch that Nebraska Maryland game, so I don't have a lot to say. But I do know for sure what I want to end the show on now because I just thought of this before it started. Looking at the standings, or we can just use our rankings. I want to know from you, like, which team are you going to be the most upset doesn't make the Big Ten tournament? Because there's going to be three, and I'm pretty confident at this point it's going to be Washington and Minnesota. So, like, who's going to be that third team that doesn't make the Big Ten tournament that you're going to be like, man, if they're the team that doesn't make it, I'll be kind of sad to not see them play in a tournament style.
I mean, I think anybody that's in the bottom three
Besides
of the
Ohio
conference,
State.
yeah, any team that's in the bottom three of the conference doesn't really stand a chance. I do think it would be sad with Ohio State just because they've had such a tough schedule, and their Big Ten schedule is really tough too. Their final 13 or 12 games, yeah, their final 13 games, 8 of them are quad one games. You can say that for a number of other teams though, but I have to agree with what Chris is saying here because I think it's likely to happen. Rutgers, that was the
Oh my
team I was going
God.
to say with Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper. Like that's the team that you put them in a Big Ten tournament scenario. I think they could make a run, and I don't know if they're getting to the Big Ten championship game or anything like that. But with the youth in those guys' legs, and their kind of playmaking ability, and the fact that Steve Peichel could just like throw rotations out there to be with Bailey and Harper and everything, like if Rutgers misses it, it's yeah. Philip says it best. If Rutgers misses, it would be a travesty.
It
We need
really
to see
would be.
Rutgers in the Big Ten
The
tournament.
teams that
Ohio
are
State fall on the sword, so that way Rutgers can be in the Big Ten tournament. Just need
just
a
based
third
on
worst team.
like the standings as of right now, the teams that are on the chopping block are like the two that I already mentioned, but it's Ohio State, Northwestern, Nebraska, and Penn State. Rutgers still has 3 conference wins, so they're 1 spot ahead of being like left out of the tournament at this point. So it's those other 4 teams right now. Obviously, a ton is going to change throughout the season, but like 1,000% agree. And I think the reason I'm starting to think about it is because I just ordered my tickets last week, so I'm getting really excited about going now. If I don't get to see Rutgers play live, I'll be upset, really upset.
Yeah, that was one of the
But
best decisions I've made of the basketball season was going to see Indiana and Rutgers because I didn't get to see Dylan Harper unfortunately, but Ace Bailey is so good.
yeah, yeah. All right,
So
good show, man.
good
I know
show.
you got to get out of here.
Rutgers and Penn State tonight. Ace Bailey's still injured, so hopefully Bailey will.
Wait, Bailey or Baldwin?
Or Baldwin. Sorry, I was just talking about Ace Bailey. Yeah, Ace Baldwin, 2 aces. That's
Couple
tough.
aces. What is this? A poker game?
There we go. Yeah. So it should be a good matchup tonight, though, with those two. And then we've got some more good matchups. Looking forward to the week. So thanks so much for joining us, everybody. We appreciate it. Thank you to Kent for coming on and doing the power rankings with us. Once again, we will be back. Well, not we. I will be back with Sunny on Friday at 1 o'clock. Me and Sunny will go through some of the news and notes of the conference and talk about some games, different positions, and stuff like that. And then next Monday, you'll get our power rankings once again for basketball. Check out the football channel as well. Check out the basketball channel. We have content being posted and live shows being on both of those right now. So you will love it. We love it. We're doing everything we can to give you good content. So thanks for being here. We appreciate it.